How many times do you get to before you lose patience with the amount of back and forth with a client? Here's a question. Set apart for a moment the money. Let's assume it's been paid for. It's a creative project. It could be a mix for a single, could be a mastering project, it could be a video you're making. How many times do you get to before you lose patience with the amount of back and forth with a client? Is it 5 times, 10 times, 50 times, 100 times? How many times before you think, please, this is perfect or as near as perfect? I don't want to talk about perfection. Perfection is a fallacy. It's not helpful, gives people anxiety, all sorts of things like that. What I want to talk about today is excellence. But first, a story. It was probably a decade ago now, or even longer, when I returned from lunch one day to the post house that I was part of the team of in Soho in London. And there were two men sat in the reception waiting to speak to me and my colleague. They had in their hand a document which was about that thick. And they said they'd been waiting to talk to us. We took them into a meeting room and they took the document, placed it in front of us and said, before we can talk to you about anything, we need you to sign this. It was an NDA and the brand was Apple. Of course, we didn't have time to read that NDA. So to this day, I might have signed away my vital organs that one day Apple will come looking forward to claim. Who knows? But joking apart, we signed it. And then they explained to us that they had some creative projects they'd like us to work on. And would we like to pitch for them? Now, anybody who knows me knows I'm an Apple fanboy. So I agreed and said, yes, of course, let's do it. So we had a week to prepare a pitch that was no longer, I think, than about 15 minutes, that we were going to pitch at Apple's London headquarters to them to show them that we were the right people to do this creative work. And during that week, me and Helena, my colleague at the time, she and I went through the whole of the pitch deck, and we went through it day after day, hours and hours. We put our blood, sweat and tears into that document. We did things like researching Apple's house fonts and their house style. So when the document appeared on the screen, it would immediately look like we'd done our homework and we knew what we were talking about. And we had to convince Apple that we were the post house to do this creative work for them. So a week later, and we were in Apple's HQ, and we pitched to them, and we tell them why we think we're the people to do the work. And we then had a quick chat with them afterwards about it. And I remember to this day, one thing has always stuck with me. One of the team there said, as we were sort of finishing up, we have people in our design departments that will sit there day after day, hour after hour, minute in by minute, pressing the on and off switch of a notebook or a desktop until it just feels right. This can go on for days, weeks and months. And we know that Apple isn't perfect, but we know that they do strive for excellence. It was quite funny for weeks after that and the months working on those projects, because we weren't allowed to tell anybody we were working on these projects for Apple. So they all had these covert names. It was a bit like being in the CIA, like Operation Stringfellow or whatever, or Operation Dog Lead. And whenever we were in a team meeting, if anybody ever said Apple, we'd all stop and look at them and death stare them until they apologized for using the word Apple, because it was all so covert and top secret. Bit silly, really, but it was fun. And we had fun working on those projects, but they were intensely detailed and incredibly difficult. A few weeks ago, I was talking to a client on the phone who has attention to detail that's second to none. He's a software developer. He creates plugins, and it comes as no surprise in some ways that he has such intense, almost OCD attention to detail with everything we do, down to the last pixel when we're making product videos and stuff like that. And I was telling him about new client and saying that this new client was less detail orientated. And he said, does that annoy you? It must be much nicer working for a client like that isn't constantly sending back stuff for amend. And I said, no, actually, it doesn't actually. I prefer working with you because, excellence is contagious, not perfection, excellence. Trying to do your very best. You know why the same bass player is on virtually every album you listen to, or the same singers or the same drummers in certain genres? It's because they have a calling card, and it's excellence. And when they go into the studio to lay down a part, the other musicians want to do the best they can because they want to be as good as the person playing the other instruments. And the engineer wants to make sure they track it well because they want to capture this excellence. And the mix engineer wants to mix it well because he wants to honor the work that's gone before him, and the mastering engineer the same. You see, excellence is incredibly contagious. And as I say, I don't subscribe to perfection. Perfection is a myth. None of us can do it. Apparently, it's the case that that rug weavers in a Middle Eastern country always put mistakes on the back of the rug because they think it's dishonoring to their God to even try and attempt to be perfect, because only God is perfect. And as I say, perfection is something I don't even attempt to do. But I do think it's important for us to try and attain for excellence, because we live in a world now, as I say, we're sitting on a YouTube channel with millions of videos. There's streaming platforms. We are being bombarded with content. And with all that content coming at us at a torrential rate, how do we set ourselves apart from the rest? And I think excellence is a fantastic calling card, whether that's a great vocal, a great guitar part, incredible drum beat, a great mix. All of those things matter. When you go and see a movie, you come out. And actually, what's really interesting is I was watching the documentary by the team at Industrial Light and Magic. And they said that if people leave the cinema and say, what great special effects, they have failed. But if they come out saying what a great story, and they didn't even kind of notice the dinosaurs or notice the world turning upside down, something like Inception or whatever, then if we've done our job right, excellence is often sometimes completely missed because we've done such a great job that a bad mix isn't distracting from a great song, or some bad special effects isn't distracting from a great movie. So sometimes our best work goes unseen. But excellence is something that we do for ourselves most of all. We do it because it matters to us. It matters to do our very best work. A few weeks ago, I was working for the toughest boss that I have, which is my wife. But joking apart, I was painting the gate at the end of our drive. I'd already stained the gate on the side of our house and had to retreat the porch. And my final job was to paint some metal gates. So I cleaned them off and rubbed them down and painted it. And she came down at the end of a Sunday afternoon to inspect my work. And she said, "It's great, Russ. You've done a really great job." And I said to her, "But who will know?" And she turned to me without blinking and said, "You'll know." That's the really important thing. It's easy to put in a shoddy job, but excellence is the way we should all strive for, because when we put in our best work, it makes us feel glad. No one else may know, but we'll know that we've done the best job. And you know what? Excellence is contagious. If you start hanging around with people who are excellent, it catches on, and we all get better at what we do. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.